Thank you, Dr. Parmeswaran. Um, I would say that the things are all falling into place. Yesterday, the first major Make in India platform, the INS Kalavari, was inaugurated by the Prime Minister, and we had the Raksha Mantri at FICCI AGM last evening, and she also made some significant announcements. She mentioned that by the end of this calendar year, all major acquisition programs which are in the pipeline will be concluded, and the cost negotiation process will also be aligned with the acquisition process. And she mentioned about the devolution of powers to the vice chief level so that speedier decisions and the timelines in the acquisition process are streamlined. She mentioned about the OFBs being uh, looked at, getting joint ventures and transfer of technology, and various other uh, things for the private sector and MSMEs. So that was a very significant address by the Raksha Mantri yesterday at FICCI. I would now, in the FICCI tradition, uh, present a green certificate, which is a ticket of 5 trees at the periphery of Sitamata Wildlife Sanctuary to the chief guest of this seminar, Lieutenant General Sarat Chandra. May I request my colleague and partner in this initiative, Anupama Airi, to kindly present the green certificate to Lieutenant Chandra. May I now request Mr. J.D. Patil, Chairman FICCI Defence Committee, to kindly make his address on the industry perspective.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Vice Chief of the Army, I would, in interest of time, say all other men in uniform and off uniform, friends from industry. It's a matter of privilege to be present in a divine place like Amrita and genuinely get that extra booster dose of some S&T the way Jan Saha defined. It's the spirituality and technology. It's not the science and technology. If we really look at where we are going in the defense, we're a bit late to start about a decade post-liberalization that happened in the 92 in India. It's 2002 onwards, the sector was truly thrown open. And there's amazing changes in the policy and the policy of inclusion of private sector, which started happening, I would say, last couple of years. We more or less have now every possible avenue which is open to the private sector to participate. And while we do that from the chambers with able support of media partners like Defense Aviation Post, we are actually trying to go more and more spread out and say anyone who obviously has some good innovative solutions but have problems, those problems obviously need an answer. And problems is not only in the industry, problems are there for the armed forces, and those armed forces problems is precisely what General Saha 2 years back decided, that we need to be voicing them out, share them with the industry, and while we share with the industry, the solutions will start emerging. Now this trust that Indian industry is capable, competent, and can handle not just innovation, but fundamental design development from that science and technology perspective to actually take it to matured solutions is a journey. And obviously in that journey, there's nothing like the top echelons of the armed forces. When they participate, it only means a serious commitment to this initiative. And General Chand, I see really your presence to be from that perspective, to say right across anywhere, any of those latent domains in which the industry can do lots of work. Coimbatore has been a precision engineering domain. This has been the kind of nerve center for industry to do things which most of the country could not really have achieved. We started listening decades back of one lakh RPM kind of spindles, and that's something which started happening right in this place. So precision is in the blood in Coimbatore, and it is that which we actually see across industry segments today doing wonderful things. Honorable Raksha Mantri today looks at this location as Coimbatore to be a very, very major future hub for doing innovation in defense and aerospace. And that's actually a reason through FICCI and through the thinking, let's say, channels, we decided that we need to be doing a very, very significant event of the solutions to the problems. Problems are known, problems were articulated, talked, and then we suddenly start noticing that within 6 months to 9 months, there are enough number of solutions which are emerging. And today is a day actually to look at some of those solutions, and with those solutions to actually take that entire initiative forward in terms of making those indigenous solutions for Indian wars to be fought with Indian solutions. Make in India has been an amazing kind of initiative by the Prime Minister, and it's exactly now little more than 3 years old. And in this 3 years old we have, of time, we are actually seeing huge amount of policy initiatives to make that thing streamlined. While it is getting streamlined, we are seeing that over those precisely 3.5 years, there is a huge amount of commitment to buy from Indian sources. There's roughly 400,000 crores worth of programs which are going to be sourced from industry, out of which two-thirds is going to be bought from Indian industry. And that's a huge statement for a government to make. And obviously then it's for industry, the user, and varieties of enablers to actually say that how do we make it happen? How do we make it cost effective? Because our budgets are always going to be constrained, and through the same budget, can you deliver more? Can you deliver more of a force multiplier? So it actually does far more than doing one job. And that's an innovation we know as Indians, all of us are extremely good at, and that's precisely what is expected going forward when we start offering. So one success story in terms of, just to say, dealing with armed forces is not about the latent, not dealing with what is known, but the latent needs of the user. And that's precisely where the user and industry, when they work hand in hand, one can genuinely design, build, and deliver something which can do multiple things. And that's something which comes to, in a way, the Indian industry in terms of what we always called as the jugaad. The idea today is not to do jugads. The idea today is to make the same jugaad so efficient that it can do multiple things given the imagination of the man who's actually going to be using it. Idea is to enable those things happen in that form of innovation, and that's precisely what is going forward. We don't really see today bulk of the policy issues to be stopping. I mean, they're still being resolved, but as the policies start getting implemented another 1 or 2 years down the line, we'll really see the floodgates truly open. And at that stage, we'll actually see some of those solutions which are emerging to be actually getting into production and contributing to the Make in India. Welcome to all of you. As chairman of the FICCI Defense Committee, it's my proud privilege, along with our media partner, Defense Aviation Post, Amrita University, who actually have been amazing amazing host, to actually have so many guests coming out from different parts of the country and provide all kind of facilities to make this kind of industry meet happen. Thank you so much. Look forward to the day.
Thank you. Before I call on Mr. Narona for his perspective, may I also mention that this interaction is not just limited to this room. There are other rooms in this campus where students and faculty are also watching a live feed from this room, so that this is a wider participation and a wider audience that is being participating in this thing. May I call on Mr. V.S. Narona to give his perspective on the role of industry in supporting R&D towards innovation and exploitation of technology. Sir.
Lieutenant General Sarat Chand, UYSM, AVSM, VSM, ADC, Vice Chief of the Army Staff. General Subrata Saha, retired and now DG of the Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers. Professor Parmeswaran, General Chanan, my colleagues on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege for me to address you on Make in India. We've had a very active supporter on Make in India, and that is none other than General Subrata Saha when he was in service. In fact, the Army Design Bureau was one of his brainchilds which he has nurtured, and I'm very, very happy that General Sarat Chand is taking that infant to maturity by his very presence on the dais here. Defense manufacturing is one area which can guarantee sustained growth, industrial growth in the country. And there's a key word here, sustainable. That sustainable ability comes from innovation, because you need to stay ahead of the competition. And innovation is basically application of basic R&D. So it falls into place. You have basic R&D from which innovation comes in. And as my colleague Mr. Patil said, the word we have in India for innovation is jugaad. But most of that jugaad is not backed up by R&D. And therefore there is no, you can't take that forward, you cannot commercialize it. Least of all, you can't give it in the hands of our soldiers because there is no durability, and that can fail at any time. So when we are dealing with the defense forces, we need to think jugaad, but have solid R&D behind it so that it is sustainable not only for manufacturing, but it puts our defense forces ahead of competition. And we don't have to depend on imports anymore, which is basic of IDDM projects. And it's extremely comforting to know that the Indian Army or the Indian MOD is supporting Indian design, developed and manufactured as the prime way of bringing purchasing equipment for the armed forces. And in that journey of IDDM, it is not big companies only that can come up with IDDM products. The small MSMEs who are specializing in niche technologies get aggregated by the system or system integrator. So if you have a big system or system integrator like a Larsen & Toubro or a Tata Motors, we will depend on MSMEs like you to bring in innovative technologies. And what we will do is we will commercialize it and present a solution to the defense. So from products, we're talking about solutions. And that solution comes from an aggregation of innovations. The Indian Army is changing, and rapidly so. I can see now problem statements being printed, problem statements being put on the net. So they've come out of this reticent mode that they were in. Everything was top secret, and industry didn't know what they were up to. Now they have opened up. It's time for us in the industry to respond. We know what problems they have, and you in your niche areas, in your respective niche areas, can come up with the solutions, and then we could put it into a system like an FICV or a FRCV and present it back to the Army. But the problem statement is basically to create a military industrial base. Because some of you will want to know that I want to get into defense, but you don't know where to start. Now the Army Design Bureau has given you a head start. You don't have to do crystal ball gazing or staring at the stars. You have a problem statement right in front of you. And that is a fantastic start to anybody who knows that if he wants to get into the Army, he's got the state problem statements in front of him, work towards those innovative solutions, and present it as a system through the system of integration to the Army. You take the, I was reading an article that wipers on cars. I still remember the days when we parked our cars in Bombay. We would take out the wipers from the car before we parked it anywhere, because when you came back, the wipers were stolen. Now there's nano glass that you don't need wipers. So that's an innovation. Somebody did R&D, basic R&D. Now putting it on the car to solve the problem of wipers itself. You don't need wipers, you don't need the motor, you don't need anything more. That's a small example of how basic R&D can get converted into a solution and then get commercialized in form of a system that goes to the armed forces. So there is only one risk here. And the risk is, will the army purchase after the solution is given? And most of you are, from the business side. And you will be saying that I will spend so much of money on this. Will the army take it? What is the purchase procedure? And there's a risk there. But I think with the presence of the vice chief on the dais, I think we can forget about that risk. The army is now dead serious that they are going to find a way to purchase IDDM products. And that's very comforting to us. So all I can say is I thank the organizers for putting this program together, where industry can talk to MSMEs and open their doors to MSMEs to help us to create solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Narona. This initiative has been supported very firmly by the Army Design Bureau, and its head, Major General A.K. Chandan. May I request Major General Chandan to kindly introduce the Army Design Bureau and its activities.
Respected Lieutenant General Sarat Chand, UISM, AVSM, VSM, ADC, our Vice Chief of the Indian Army, General Subrata Saha, General Harris, who have recently been icons for us as we grew up in service, and it's such a overwhelming kind of a situation to see all of you here, and I'm standing and talking. Dr. Parmeshwaran, Mr. Natarajan, Mr. Patil, Mr. Narona, and Mr. Sundaram from the Gudisia. It is my proud privilege and honor to basically put across in a short presentation the activities of the Army Design Bureau and how in the Indian Army we are leveraging this Make in India through this nascent organization which is set up just about a year back. In fact, it was in December of 2016 that we had the first edition of the Army Technology Seminar, which was inaugurated by the Honorable RM, where we set out the first set of 50 problem statements. Through these, we challenged the industry and the academia by putting across in public domain the requirements that the Indian Army needs to basically solve its day-to-day problems. It also carried a supplement on the niche technologies which we would require in the future and which can be incubated in institutions like the Amrita University and the other premier technological institutions. This initiative was after a very, very extensive outreach program and was in full faith and belief that here in India, adequate capability existed within the Indian academia to create world-class cutting-edge technologies, and the Indian Army had the capacities to deliver better than the best products. And somehow out here in Coimbatore, we found that the integration between the academic institutions, the academic ecosystem and the industrial ecosystem was so beautifully integrated that we felt that this is one place which has a huge potential to actually develop and meet our aspirations. The Indian Army actually found over so many years of experience that we have challenges which largely need solutions which are sourced out of India. It operates over a geography which is extremely varied. I don't think there is any other country which actually has this kind of a vast variation in terrain and geography. And because of that, every equipment, every product that is designed by a particular country is actually designed to their needs. And therefore we find that one size fits all doesn't happen. So we have to make products here ourselves. We have to design them ourselves. And that is the way forward. Besides this, actually the frontiers are expanding every day. War is now no longer confined to the line of control. It is actually moving far inside. Not only physically, but also in domains like the cyber domain and the other domains, which are global commons. And while these frontiers are expanding, the budgets are shrinking, so that's a double whammy. And therefore, we can no longer resort to importing equipment because it just is not cost effective. And we have to actually have all the technology and the production here. Only then we'll be able to optimize costs and get the best bang for the buck. Besides, no country is willing to pass with cutting edge technology. We will always be handed over technologies which are more than a decade old. And the countries which are parting with these technologies have already moved to the next level. So gentlemen, when we buy things from outside, we are already buying stuff which is 10 to 15 years old as far as the technology is concerned, and therefore within another 10 years we will require some technological upgrade, some strapping, etc. So it is much better to start making our own stuff here. We also have a very vast inventory of legacy equipment. The Indian Army is one of the largest armies in the world, and our inventories are huge. We cannot change these inventories in a very short span of time. We will have to manage certain legacy equipment, for which we will need spares, upgrades, etc. to come here from within the country. For two reasons. Firstly, the countries which were supplying us those spares have now started charging, because we are now tied down to this equipment, so they charge huge amount of money. And secondly, in many cases, the country from whom we had got this equipment does not exist in the same form anymore, and their ecosystem has already been fragmented over so many more countries. So now the process of actually getting to them has become so much more elaborate, and some places factories have shut down. We have no options. We are a very large force, I mentioned, and our requirements on any one single item will give you a very sound business case to actually invest in the Indian Army. Understanding all this, we set up the Army Design Bureau, which became a common platform and a primary interface between people who are the key decision makers in the service headquarters and the stakeholders who are providing the technology, who are manufacturing the products, and who are in the field of testing, evaluating, etc. It is a single point contact for all your queries and is open 24 into 7 for interaction and facilitation. We have our own website which is highly interactive, and I get about 50 to 60 hits every day and about 8 to 10 mails which we respond after due deliberation. We have in the past realized that there is a lack between the technology provider and the product manufacturer. There is a lack of understanding as far as the operational perspective is concerned. To overcome that, we had organized visits to various forward areas and taken both the scientists and the R&D engineers in the industry to actually go on ground and really get a feel of what is the environment where the equipment is going to be deployed, what are the kind of logistic support that is required, and what exactly is the need of the user. We have also organized equipment displays for people to come, have a feel of the equipment, understand where the problems are as far as giving upgrades, spare maintenance, etc. of the equipment is concerned. And this is an ongoing process. Even today, if anybody wants to gain access to a particular equipment, all you have to do is put in a mail to us and we will take this forward. We've had firing displays just to showcase the might of the Indian Army, as also seminars along with it to make sure how these equipment can be further enhanced as far as their performance is concerned. The next firepower demo incidentally is slated in the second week of January in Devlali, and we shall be soon contacting the FICCI and other agencies to promulgate the dates. As mentioned, we had set out a list of problem definition statements, and we have also encouraged innovation both from within the army as well as unsolicited responses which are outside the problem definition statement, which anybody would like to come forward to. And we have, today I have with me 1359 unsolicited responses and more than 70 solutions to problem statements which are being examined at various ends and how we take it forward. All these are essentially placed across the entire spectrum of technology readiness levels, where the first 3-4 TRL 1, 2, 3, 4 are largely to do with research and development. Then we move into the design and development, prototyping, limited series production, and somewhere close to technology readiness 14, 15 is the mass production that is finally that happens with the help of the Indian industry. Now, since we get solutions which are across this entire spectrum, we have ways and means to harness them. At the lower end, we have the Army Technology Board, which can sanction projects where research can happen with the IITs as well as the other public and private research institutes. This is some place where even the private industry can take it up as a R&D project. The processes are a little different, and the Army Technology Board will carry this research either towards a prototype or take it to the next technology readiness level, where we will then get an industry involved. In case you come up with certain solutions which already have research and development, they are now a bit beyond that. We have the technology development funds. The technology development funds are being essentially responded to by a combination of a research institute and industry. So you have this little bit of linkage here coming in, that you will essentially realize a product. Beyond that, if you have products that have matured to a certain level and you want to respond to solutions solicited through the problem statements or otherwise, we have the make. And make 2 in particular is a very agile process where we have now reduced, it will be promulgated very shortly, but we have already come up with a process which will reduce the entire period of procurement from what there was nothing actually mandated in a make process, but now bounded to about 50